Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this seminar. It concerns one of the key concepts that is going around sustainable fashion at the moment, and arguably all areas of design across the world, and that is the idea of the circular economy. So we have, to make a 20-minute presentation, Lukas Fuchs, the research analyst in the Make Fashion Circular team at the MacArthur Foundation, and he'll be giving you an introduction to the circular economy and how to make fashion circular. And after that, we'll be joined by Sergi Masip, who is from Hallotex, and we'll talk more about what Hallotex is contributing to this movement as well in a second. But for now, Lukas, thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for the introduction. And could I get a hands up of people who have actually been in contact with the concept of circular economy? Wow. I'm asking because when we started with the foundation in 2010, if you Googled circular economy, you would get a couple of thousand hits. If you Google it today, it's up to 80, 90 million hits, so the concept is growing rapidly. That's me. I started 2 years ago at the MacArthur Foundation as an analyst, and I've been involved with writing the report, The New Textiles Economy, where we analyze the material flow and the state of the fashion industry and created a vision for a future circular economy for fashion. The report is available on our homepage and free to download for everyone. I've since stayed on the team as an analyst for the second phase, where we now use the results from the report as a foundation to implement it and rapidly try to accelerate the transition to a circular economy for the fashion industry. Who knows what that is? Any light bulb enthusiasts in the room? Yeah? We got one? So this is a light bulb that's been burning for more than 100 years. And I've put that up because that's a problem for the light bulb industry. Back in the early 20th century, they were producing high-quality light bulbs, and the problem is people stopped buying because they were too good. So Osram, General Electric, Philips, and a couple more met and produced what's called the Geneva Cartel, where they limited the lifespan of light bulbs, and actually a light bulb was only allowed to burn for no longer than 1,000 hours. And that's at the heart of what we call a linear economy, where we take commodities, we take materials, we make them into a product, we use the product, and then we dispose of the product. Increasingly, the speed of disposal and the use is going, so the speed of disposal is going up and the length of the use is going down. And a lot of initiatives are trying to mitigate the effects of the system, which is making the system less wasteful, but we as a foundation believe that we actually need to change the system from a linear system to a circular system. The concept is quite intuitive, and we have produced as a foundation a number of principles for a circular economy that are underlying that system. So in a circular economy, we design out waste and pollution. We keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, and we regenerate natural systems. To illustrate this is what we call the butterfly diagram. It's a bit complex, so I'll walk you through it using jeans as an example. On the right-hand side, we have what we call the technical cycle, and on the left-hand side, we have what we call the biological cycle. All materials can go through the technical cycles, okay? That can be cotton as a biological material, but there can also be polyester as a technical material. What's important is that only biological materials can go back to the biosphere. Seems pretty straightforward, but it can be a problem when we are creating blends, for example, and we can't separate the blends from each other. So they are lost to go back to the biological cycle and can only be burned or landfilled. So what can we do from a circular economy perspective? So I said one principle is we want to keep products and materials in use for as long as possible. So first of all, a lot of this is common sense, but it illustrates quite nicely what the hierarchy of a circular economy is. So we want to use the product for as long as possible. That means we want to maintain, we want to repair, we want to share the product with others once we don't want it anymore. We want to remanufacture the product. So, for example, if I have a pair of jeans, no one wants it anymore, can we actually use the fabric of the jeans to make a new product out of it? And only ultimately, once we have exhausted all the former opportunities, we go into recycling. As I said, for a pair of jeans, this can be a cotton pair of jeans, or this could be, from a sportswear perspective, that could be polyester. This can all go through that. But on the left-hand side, you can only send back biological materials to the biological cycle. You cannot dispose or send polyester back to the biosphere. It just takes too long to decompose. So that's the complex concept of a circular economy. I said in the report we have actually analyzed the material flow of the fashion system, and if you think back to one of my first slides where I showed the linear model, which is take, make, dispose, we found that overwhelmingly 73% of the material in the fashion industry gets landfilled or incinerated. And what we also found is that in the last 15 years, the amount of times that we use our product is actually going down. So this arrow is growing in size. The speed is going up, which means that the amount of clothing that goes to landfill incineration is growing massively. We see that less than 1% of the material actually stays in a closed loop in the fashion industry. We have a few cascades where we downcycle products into mattresses or insulation for houses, or the car industry uses a lot of that. But at its core, the fashion industry is extremely wasteful. But we also found it's a great opportunity. And I guess this is why you are in the room today. If we implement our findings from the report and work towards the circular economy, this is a roughly 560 billion opportunity for the fashion industry. And that includes the reuse of products, the reuse of materials, but it also has a component of business model change. So how can we create more revenue from the same product? The report that we wrote is the first phase of our initiative, and we have now in May last year launched the second phase, where we try to implement our findings from the report, and we focus on 3 areas. So we're looking at new business models that increase clothing use. We look at inputs that are safe and renewable, and that one is a bit wordy, solutions so used clothes can be turned into new. It's a bit wordy because we wanted to make space for many different concepts of reusing fabric, reusing products, and not just jump straight to recycling. And I brought a few examples with me. Some of you might know them. Vigga is a rental company from Denmark, and they rent children's clothes. Do we have parents in the room? Yes. So you know how quickly these children are growing and how often you need new clothes. So basically, once your child needs a bigger size, you just send back the entire package and they send you a new one. And that's on a subscription basis of 48 euros a month. They found that through this new business models, they managed to reduce their textile waste by 70 to 85%, simply because they are keeping the product in use instead of just throwing it away. Second area of focus, safe and renewable inputs. Earth Colors is a company that uses dyes are synthesized from non-edible agricultural waste. It's available in 7 dyes, can be applied to cellulosic fibers, and is fully traceable, and it's also commercially available. Thirdly, and this is one of my favorite examples, and this again goes back to why we named our third focus area solutions so used clothes can be turned into new. Redone take unwanted Levi's jeans from clothing collectors. So these are perfectly fine products that people don't want to use anymore. And they go to the collection companies and they specifically look for these jeans. And what they do is they take them apart at the seams and they reuse the entire fabric. So let's say a Levi's jeans is sold for $100. Who thinks that redone jeans are sold at a lower price than the original Levi's jeans? Who thinks it's a similar price? Who thinks it's a higher price? All right, probably many people know redone. I love that example because it shows they actually sell them for more than twice as much. It shows that we can use perfectly fine materials that are discarded off to create new and beautiful products that people are willing to buy an absolute premium on. So this example I like a lot. So that's Make Fashion Circular. I'm just going to quickly talk a bit about how we approach this. We believe that changing the fashion industry is a systemic challenge. And to be able to change it, we need companies from the entire value chain. We need the producers, we need the manufacturers, we need the brands, we need the collectors, we need the recyclers, we need everyone to match the scale of the challenge. So as you can see here, in our initiative, we have representation from the entire value chain. So yeah, we have a number of participants, we have a number of core partners, and philanthropic partners that help finance the entire initiative. That's the end of my presentation. We're going to continue with a short conversation.
So I'd like to welcome to the stage Sergi Masip, who is Sustainable Development for Hallotex, which is a Barcelona-based company committed to making socially and environmentally sourced textiles. Now, I know you two guys know each other really well, and one of the reasons for that is that you're one of the partners, is that correct, for the Make Fashion Circular?
Yeah, we are partners of the MacArthur Foundation for the Make Fashion Circular, and the main idea why we are entering to the MacArthur Foundation is that, as Lukas already said, for moving towards sustainability, we need collaboration of all the partners of the value chains, collaboration for the society, from universities, young designers, and all of you, we need you to move to circularity. And the project of the MacArthur Foundation put in the same room suppliers, manufacturers, crushers, and also brands to try to move forward to circularity and to take action on that way. So why this way?
I think it's there's so many reasons to love the idea of circular economy, and I love thinking about how this whole conversation started with Ellen MacArthur, literally on her yacht, and devastated by the amount of plastic that she saw in the oceans. Is that correct?
That is one piece of the story. The other piece is that so MacArthur, our founder, broke the world record for sailing around the world single-handedly. So all that she could take on the boat is all that she had. And this is how she understood the concept of finite resources. She understood that our planet is basically her boat. And at the moment, we are chucking supplies overboard at increasing speeds and enormous amounts of it.
So again, circular economy. I love the idea of collaboration that goes through it. So as you said on your last slide, all partners have to be involved in this, from the consumer all the way up to the top. I like the idea of the design and creativity that has to go into creating these new fibers, and rethinking what we consider to be waste. So instead of throwing something away, could it actually be a new resource? But I know you guys have got a project going. What is the project that you two are working on?
Yeah, we started a project with the MacArthur Foundation that is called the OISHO project. It's a project regarding collaboration. I don't know if everyone here knows OISHO is a brand from Inditex that is specialized in gymwear, sportswear, yoga as well. So they did some yoga events all around the world. And as we are based in Barcelona, we asked for OISHO to ask for the people that's coming to the yoga event to bring it back their old white T-shirt that they don't use it, and they're gonna take it. We are gonna crush it and deliver new ones to these participants and to the customers of OISHO that come from their old T-shirt. And in that project, we add also the technology brand, because in this world, we need to communicate the circularity, but it's not easy to communicate this kind of thing to the society in a funny way. And HP had a scanner on the T-shirt where you can scan the T-shirt and see a video of all the process of industrial process of crushing, knitting their new T-shirt. And it was a really good feedback from the customers.
I'm sorry, can you tell me a bit more about that project?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're actually showing people what happens all the way through the whole life cycle of a garment.
Yeah, we made a video on the industry, on our industries, from the knitting to the dyeing and also in the cutting, because we think that the people needs to know what happens with their T-shirt when it's circular. Yeah. Because you explain circularity to the people, but they need to look what is implied to the industry. So we make this video and add it with technology to increase the value of the T-shirt. And they scan the one print that we make on the T-shirt, you scan, and your mobile phone, you see the video that it goes to the T-shirt, that old T-shirt to the new one. Yes.
So Hallotex, for me, is an example of a supplier who's taken up this challenge of becoming, because you weren't founded with the principles of circular economy, were you? This is a transition that you made later on. And we talked a little bit about that transition before. Do you want to tell me how and why a supplier like you, supplying to a mainstream fashion industry, decided to make that change, and what it was like shifting?
Yeah, we decided to move to sustainability and circular economy 5 years ago, because as we are vertically integrated supplier based in Morocco, we be aware how amount of waste we are generating every day. More or less 1 ton of waste we are generating every day. There is a huge waste all over the year. So we decided to do something with that waste. And in terms of challenge, we face the most important challenge internally is to change the mindset of the people of your company, the design teams, the sales teams, and also the engineering teams to think about, in order to design from the waste. That is not easy, but it's the only way to avoid this linear model that we are talking about that in the fast fashion industry. Yes.
So, Lukas, from your point of view, the landscape is changing, though, isn't it? Because there are more and more suppliers like Hallotex eager to take up on these new ideas. Is that how you see the industry changing and transforming?
Well, when we started the initiative, we saw that there's a lot of interest along the entire value chain. I think the number of companies that we have in the initiative shows that the interest is there. But as I said earlier, it's difficult to do this just on your own as a supplier. And yeah.
Yeah, it was if more suppliers, and we engage more suppliers to join on board in terms of circularity will be the best news for us, because we need more suppliers to do that. Alone is impossible to move to the brands and say, okay, you have to change that. Top brands, if a supplier comes to say, okay, you have to change that to circularity, it's difficult, but if all the suppliers change their mindset to circularity, it will be easier, and it will be more impact to the environmental impact that we create in production, and we could reduce that by increasing the suppliers.
And these are actually the feedback loops that we need in the system. So we need the suppliers to feedback to the brands what are the specificities that they need to regard. And we need the collectors to feedback. We need the recyclers to feedback to understand what are the challenges in the design for the clothing.
So it seems like in making a transition to a more circular economy, there are quite big challenges, aren't there? As well as quite obvious benefits. Would you say that? I mean, is a transition sometimes difficult for a company like Hallotex to make?
For us, the transition it was difficult, but it's like an opportunity to us in order to circularity give us the opportunity to extend the life cycle of the fiber and to reduce our environmental impact that we move to society. And we believe and we thought that in the future, in the near future, the new fabrics that we are making, the most valuable resources that the companies or the brands will have, it will be the waste.
And what we must not forget is that in the past 70 years, we have optimized that linear model. And it's more efficient, it's cost effective. So of course it's going to take some time to create a circular system that is that has the same benefits, that is efficient as the linear model, that is profitable as the linear model. But as I pointed out, we found a lot of opportunities for companies to start experimenting with circular business models, with circular material flows, etc., etc. And it's quite a significant opportunity, and this is what makes it so exciting.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. You say it's more efficient, and you're right. It's the linear system is so deeply embedded in our culture now, but it's one definition of the word efficient, isn't it? Because on another level, it's really inefficient for the planet to work in this way.
Well, I like to illustrate this with a little figure. So if you're driving towards a cliff, but then that's the linear system. That's what we're doing at the moment. And even if it's efficient or you make the linear system more efficient, that only means that you're driving still towards the cliff because you're still in the same system. You might just be driving a bit less fast. But ultimately, you are falling off that cliff. So we really need to change to a circular model.
Yes. Because adopting the circular economy seems to imply a change almost of a culture and system. And I think one of the things that you mentioned just now was how does the circular economy serve as a business model for innovation? And I thought that was very fascinating. It's certainly an angle I hadn't thought of before, that it can change so much about the way we think about everything on our planet.
So if we think about business models at the moment, most models function on a high output. So we need to create higher outputs so that the company is growing, that we're selling more. And this increases the speed of the turnaround of clothing, and it brings a whole lot of challenges also to the companies. We've read in the media that there's a lot of stock that can't be sold. What do we do with it? Whereas there are a number of fascinating business models, like the one that I mentioned earlier, Vigor. Another one is Rent the Runway. And the second challenge that these companies are tackling is we are using our clothes a lot less often. So it has clothing utilization has gone down 30% in the last 15 years. And if we, for example, switch to a rental-based model, these companies can start circulating the clothing, so we increase utilization, we need less resources, and actually, from a company perspective, it makes sense to create the best quality item possible because you want to create as many revenue streams from that item as possible. And also that feeds back into the design. So when you have a rental scheme and you get your clothing back and you see, okay, my clothes are breaking in the same spot all the time, that helps you to inform the design decisions that you have so that you can actually then rent it out more often in the next batch.
Yes. I mean, I think that sounds like a brilliant way to live. I wanted to talk to you about a project that we, again, spoke about behind the scenes as a way, and I thought this sounded so lovely, sort of brought in so many elements, as a way of reaching new audiences with the concept of the circular economy. And you were talking about your project called Organic Sound.
Yeah, Organic Sound is a project that we started at Hallotex that combines three of our main passion, and maybe it's one of your passion as well, that is music, is sustainability, and is participation. What we can see is combine these three big things to deliver to, we work with artists and fans, so we have the music, the participation with the fans, and sustainability because all the garments that we made for that artist is recyclable. So I would like to explain you in a few minutes the Jason Brass tour project that is we take. The artist Jason Brass, I don't know if someone here knows what is Jason Brass, and in the USA tour that we made this summer, we asked for the fans to take back their old T-shirts, multicolor T-shirt, wherever the color is okay, and we take this post-consumer waste from the T-shirt and the obsolete stock that Jason Brass has in their warehouse from last shows, and we crush it and we deliver to these fans a new Jason Brass T-shirt with their old ones, and it was a really, really good feedback for the fans.
Yeah, it's a great way of outreaching to new markets. So the two themes of this exhibition have been, what is the future of fabrics, and how can fashion be used as a force for good? And I'm going to put the first question to you, Lukas, is what can we expect to see in terms of sustainable fabrics for the future in the next 10 to 15 years? From your perspective.
So I have mentioned, and I want to focus on that a bit, earlier, the two different cycles, the biological cycle and the technical cycle. And a lot of our products today are made of blends. And they're made of blends that come from both cycles. And there's a lot of innovation going on in recycling to be able to separate the two, but we don't have any separation technology today on an industrial level. So we see a lot of innovation going on in the area of stretch. So how can we get to that level of stretch without having to blend different fibers that are not compatible with the cycles? So that's a lot of innovation that we see going on. And a second area of innovation is all the add-ons that we have in the fabric. So if I take, for example, jeans, the rivets, the buttons, the zippers, the seams, how can we, at the end of the use, easily deconstruct the fabric so that we can put back 100% of the material in the cycle? How can we easily remove the zippers, the buttons, the seams, maybe even microwave the seams so that the fabric just falls apart and you can reuse the entire bit?
Oh yeah, that sounds really exciting. And then, yes, from your perspective, what would be the future of fabrics from Hallotex's perspective?
It was not an easy question, but nowadays 50% of production of all fibers in the world is polyester. And I hope that in the future, polyester will not be in our lives in order to reduce the impact of the sea, the impact of environmental impact. And I think that we, as Lukas said, we have to impose these types of materials that allows to us to design, as I mentioned, with the most circularity possible design that we can make. So we have to use those materials that allows to us to make this kind of jeans that was 100% circular, to reduce and to reuse and to introduce these jeans one more time to the loop, and there will be the types of fabrics that will be used in the future. And as I said before, I think that the most valuable fabric, well, it's not a fabric, but will be the most valuable resource. It will be the waste that the industry will be generating.
And then the next question was, how can fashion be used as a positive force for good? And I know this was very dear to the hearts of the founders of today's expo, but rather than just mitigating its bad effects, how can we use it to change the world, to make it a better place? And like I said, to repair the damage we've done. Is there an idea that we can repair anything that we've created?
Well, I actually like to think that the fashion industry is very powerful in its communication. And we can use the reach that we have with all the brands, with all the influences to spread the good that we already have. We have good fabrics, we have good dyes, and if we use that communication power, then we can have a very big impact together.
And for me, I would like to put an example about how circularity could be reduce the impact, of have positive impact on society or nature. Our industry is based in Morocco, and nowadays all the waste that is generated in that is burned and is incinerated. So if we try to, just 1% is introduced on the loop. So if we try to enter more waste and more fabrics to this loop of reusing, we're going to reduce the impact on that society that nowadays is burning all the waste that is creating. So just with this change, we can have a huge impact on some societies that where our industry is based.
Because when I was reading about your project, your recycling project called The Loop, and I saw that statistic, currently only 0.1% of all garment waste is recycled into new fibre. I've been talking about sustainable fashion for quite a while, and I still get taken aback by some statistics. And I think that was one that I found particularly horrific. And I also wanted to talk to you about, I mean, it's quite obvious that recycling systems are totally inadequate at the moment. Is that why you developed your own?
The Loop is a project that we start in order to, is in terms of creating new yarns and creating new fabrics from pre- and post-consumer waste. So our idea is to shred our waste that we create in our production, and also the post-consumer waste that the brands, like obsolete stock that fast fashion brands has in warehouse that is not sell, or post-consumer waste, and introduce to our factories and create new yarns and new fabrics to all resell it to the brands. So it's the main goal of the Loop recycling project.
And final question before I open it up to the audience. What needs to happen to make this world, to make the fashion industry a better industry? What still needs to happen?
We strongly believe that this is a systems challenge, so we need to collaborate along the entire value chain. Only together can we meet the scale of the challenge and use collaborative projects like the Oil Show project as a starting point to do more of it, and to start feedbacking into the design, to start changing our business models to increase the utilization.
Yeah, for me, it's we need step forwards. We need action on the industry, because on those past years, the industry is a little bit afraid to move on, and it's waiting to the super change. But to get this change, 100% circularity, we have to move slow step forwards and a small step forward. So we need action.
Yes, I understand. And yet, the challenges that face us are very urgent. So it's a real balance between things moving gradually, but having to try and push them forward faster, because there are such challenges coming to meet us. I'm going to open the floor to the questions. Does anyone have a question for Lukas or Sergi about circular economy?
Hi there. From what you said, it seems like the last step to closing the circle really depends not so much on the willingness of brands, which is there, but on informing the consumer and giving them the opportunity to actually take the step to close the circle, to recycle or reuse their old clothing. So basically, my question is, how do you achieve that? How do you popularize that more? Not just through one-off projects, but making it a permanent demand from the consumer.
Yeah. For the consumer to make informed decisions, the system needs to be right. So we need to set in place the right system conditions. And we have certain actors in the system that have the most power. But obviously, communication to people, to citizens, to show them the projects and to show them the solutions that are available is definitely important.
Yeah, does anyone have another question? Oh, there's a gentleman at the back there.
Thanks a lot. So my question is basically, a lot of the problems seem to be in labeling. So solutions could be had for recycling if all the brands tried to have a homogenized labeling type. Where do you think the barriers are in trying to formalize a kind of label for all brands to use?
In terms of labeling, I totally agree with you. If we have to move to more recycled garments, more recycled materials, we need also the collaboration from legal authorities to think about that, how we label the garments. Nowadays, what we are doing in our facilities is to classify between composition and color and not mix any kind of composition to try to avoid these kinds of things or have mixed composition in the same t-shirt. But as I said, we need the legal authorities to move forward in terms of labeling. Yeah.
Another question. Again, the gentleman at the back.
Thank you very much. I think what you were saying about the circular economy is obviously important, but I'd like to actually question something beyond that, which is that we're approaching this always from like a win-win ideology, so that it's a win for business and it's a win for the environment or the consumer. But ultimately, we're talking about a system which is fueled by your partners, such as H&M, for example. And ultimately, what happens when these are the people that are determining what win-win is? Because ultimately, they're always remaining legitimate in this situation. So fundamentally, how can we move past the real issue, which is consumption cycles driven by capital interest, for example?
I would play that back to the business models I mentioned earlier, and of course, a lot of the companies are part, or all companies are part of the system that we have today and have built that system. But that also means that they have the power to change the system, and by joining the initiative, they also show that they have the interest in exploring new areas. And like you said, the consumption models, the increasing speed at which we can consume clothes, that can be, let's say, handled by business models such as rental, where you not only increase the amount of wears of a garment, but also as a company, you keep ownership of the product, which means it is, you know what's in the product, you know the design of the product, you know how to take it apart and feed the material back into the system so that we can radically decrease the amount of material that we need while we are increasing the use of the material.
Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, we're talking about the need for radical change here. So how can we achieve radical change when we're facilitating the maintaining of status quo? That is my overarching question.
I kind of hear you, but we're in this system and we have to work with the main players in it, I think.
Oh, no, for sure. No, I agree totally, but I think there's got to be a level of pushback on a larger, we're talking about large systemic change here in order to achieve a radically different system. how are you going to push back, to example, with a partner like H&M and say, well, okay, you're going to make more recyclable products, but ultimately, like, there's nothing to change the fact that you're pumping out millions of items of clothing unnecessarily that are being burned or destroyed. I know you're increasing the recycling, but there's still a lot of energy, there's still exploitation of labor in that process. So I think it's ultimately a valid question when we're talking about circular economies in the larger scale of things.
Yeah, I think when an organization like H&M works with Ellen MacArthur Foundation, they're beginning a process of transformation. And then I will put it back to the consumer to push for what they want. But it is going to be a slow, I mean, the system is so entrenched, you know. It's going to be a slow, hard battle. But Ellen MacArthur Foundation's work is instrumental in this. But it's a really great question. Thank you. Any final questions? Go to the lady.
This is a question really about how urgent the problem is, yet obviously it's such a huge, massive machine that it will take time. But I'm curious to know if you know, how you collaborate in terms of legislation and government, and if there's conversation about the carbon footprint tax, because I see this as potentially one way of, I hate to say it, but forcing people into also being accountable and potentially creating different incentives with the consumer in terms of price tag, because obviously also a lot of sustainable products are more expensive. Anyway, it's a big question, but I do think that there's urgency, and it's no joke anymore. So people have to be held accountable also. And I was just curious if that comes up in your conversations with the big players that you talk with.
We are not in close conversation with legal authorities, but there are few organizations that is trying to make what you are doing, like a sustainable apparel coalition with the high index. There is a tool that needs to try to classify which type of, how sustainable is the fabric that we are making, or how sustainable is the final garment, to try to classify and show to the society, okay, you are buying this kind of garment that is harm to the environment, this is better. So it's the way that nowadays we are having to try to have this kind of legal problems.
Okay, thank you.
That's going to be the last question. On the upside, both Lukas and Sergi are going to be milling around outside, so you can try and catch them to ask, because this conversation could go on and on, I think. It's really fascinating. So a couple of things. Please go outside, look at the fabrics. These could be the fabrics of the future. One thing I've said in a couple of other talks is when you're handling them, think about where they've come from, who's woven them. There are fish skins out there. Where were the fish from? This is a fantastic way of reconnecting with the fibers that we are eventually going to be putting on our body. Social media, please use the hashtags Future Fabrics Expo. And I think that was it. Please enjoy the rest of the expo. Thank you very much.